What are we talking about? You play to win the game. You don't play to just play. Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40! Can't wait! Let's go!
Good morning. It is Coffee and Sports. It is the morning show here on Sports Empire Network. Thank you for making us part of your morning routine. Whether you're watching us live on Facebook or YouTube, or maybe you're watching us on live on Roku TV right now, thanks to Northeast Streaming Sports Productions. We appreciate that you're here. I am Chris, and of course, that is Mo. Mo, how are you this morning, sir?
Doing well, coming off of a really interesting NBA In Tourney game last night between the Lakers and Suns. So there's always something to talk about.
Mo, speaking of that, the Final Four is set. We know what Vegas is going to look like for the in-season tournament. Before we get to your predictions for who is going to win the first ever in-season tournament, let me ask you this. There was an interesting take that happened a couple of nights ago. Maybe it was last night. And it had to do with the Boston Celtics. And we've talked about this before. We talked about how we think the in-season tournament cost the Warriors a victory this season because end of the game was happening. And instead of, going into end of the game mode, they were pushing. They were trying to put more points up because they needed more points to advance in the in-season tournament. And the other night, Boston, up by a lot, they were fouling on purpose to put the other team on the free throw line so they could miss free throws, so they could get the ball back, so they could score more points. Is that something you think the NBA is going to look at when it comes to the format of the in-season tournament? Because both of those situations obviously are not great, right? You don't want teams losing games that they normally wouldn't lose because they're trying to score more points, in the last 3 minutes of the fourth quarter. You don't want teams up by 30 fouling on purpose so they can get more shots because they need to get 6 more points for the in-season tournament standings. Neither of those were great looks. But at the same time, I think overall the in-season tournament has been a success for the NBA. So is the NBA going to look at that as just unnatural consequence and deal with it kind of thing? Or do you think this is going to be something they try to tweak moving forward?
So I agree with you. The tournament has been a success. You know what? I honestly think, knowing the NBA, I think they're going to just say it's a blip, right? It's a thing that potentially was always there the way they formatted the tournament. So I don't think drastic changes are coming. They might look into it, and I hope the competition committee does take a look at it. Basketball, like all sports, should be organic. It shouldn't feel like you're trying to hedge your bets at Vegas or something when you're fouling on purpose, when you normally wouldn't do that in situations. The Warriors game should be like the blueprint for what shouldn't happen in a basketball game. They're winning, but they feel pressure because they have to win by a certain amount of points. I don't really like that. And I think it's no doubt it cost them the game because they played differently. So going forward, I hope they take a look at it, but my guess is they won't because of just how successful the tournament has been to this point.
Let's talk about the Final Four. Who do you like to walk away as first ever in-season champions?
I'm biased. I think the Lakers will win it all. I do. And not necessarily because they're the better team, but I just think they will win it all. They're definitely taking it serious. The game they won last night versus the Suns, they actually only shot 37% as a team and won that game. And I know a lot of people say, well, they beat a good Phoenix team. They did, but that was a one possession game against a team that turned the ball over 25 times. When a team turns the ball over 25 times in an NBA game, it shouldn't be a close game. It shouldn't. So I'll take the win, but I'm cautiously optimistic. I think the Lakers I think they match up well with the Pelicans. Even though I do think if you look at the talent of the Pelicans when they're healthy, top to bottom, they're as talented as any team in the NBA when they're fully manned. So I love the matchup. I love the other matchup, the Bucs versus the high-powered Pacers. So you already know. Let me just put it out there. Indiana versus Milwaukee, I'm guessing 135, 140, somewhere in there. It's going to be that kind of game. The Pacers they play with pace. They don't play a lot of defense, but their strategy is a lot like Steve Nash's Suns. We know we're going to score. Can you keep up with us? And to this point, it's bode well for them.
Mo, let's talk about this. The Boston Celtics, who we talked about yesterday, Charles Barkley thinks they are locked in. They are going to be NBA champions this season. And I think we both kind of pumped the brakes on that a little bit yesterday. We like the idea of them contending to be there, but we don't know if they're locked in at this point. But the Celtics have come out and they've acknowledged the fact that they are going to be buyers before the trade deadline this year because they need depth for their bench. That's great to say, Mo. Excuse me. But what does that look like? What does that look like for the way this team is currently comprised? Because I think most teams in the NBA would like to come out and say, we're going to be buyers before the deadline. We need some depth on our bench. That's a great thing to say. But what does it actually look like if you're Boston in their current team makeup as far as what does depth even look like for their bench? What do they actually need if they really are going to be buyers?
If they're going to really be buyers, I think they definitely need more firepower off their bench. They just don't have a lot of firepower. They need another shot creator. My guess, because they're a smaller team, they're going to go out and try to get a big. If in a perfect world, they'd like an athletic big that can run the floor, maybe play in space defensively and recover. But I think that's what they're looking for. When I watch Boston, I think they struggle because there's a lack of firepower on the bench. I would say this, though, the answer might be on your roster. I think you should stagger Drew Holiday and Derek White's minutes. Maybe let Drew play more with the second unit. As great a player as Drew Holiday is, if you've watched the Celtics since the start of the season, he's been everything you would expect of him defensively. But offensively, he seems lost. He just seems like he has not found his place on that team. And I like I told you the other day, give me all-star Drew Holiday averaging around 18 points a game, 7 assists, shooting around 40% from 3, 46, 47% from 2. Give me that guy and I'm good. The current version is shooting about 44% from the field, 35% from 3, averaging about 12 points a game. That's not going to get it done. That's not going. He is supposed to be an upgrade from Marcus Smart, and when he's playing like Drew Holiday, he is an upgrade from Marcus Smart. But right now, he looks a lot like Marcus Smart, which isn't a bad thing, but that's not the upgrade they were looking for. So I think to some degree the solution is already on their team. There's just a better way to use Drew Holiday. And remember, he came to that team fully knowing Tatum and Brown are 1 and 2. Those are your first two options. But you also had to figure out that Porzingis is your third option. There's no denying that. What happened to Drew is, though, he's become the fifth option behind Derek White. And I just think he's lost in the offense.
Mo, if athletic bigs grew on trees, the Warriors might have had 7 titles. That's all I'm saying.
No, right? they don't. And it's hard.
Everybody wants the athletic big.
Yeah. Look, I'm always blowing the horn of the young man that plays for the Nets, Nicholas Claxton, because I think that he's terrific. He's a little slender in his build, but his skill set, and he runs like a small forward. Like, that's the guy that probably everybody would love to get. I'm sure Brooklyn has no intentions of letting him go, but like you said, athletic, there are a lot of bigs, but actually athletic bigs, they're rare.
Mo, one of the things we talked about weeks ago before the NBA season began was what is the in-season tournament going to look like for the older guys? What is it going to look like effort-wise for the guys who don't need this, right? Who are 8, 9, 10 years in the league, who it's just a Wednesday night for them. What is that going to look like effort-wise? And I think from what I've seen across the board, everyone's pretty invested. Obviously, the coaching staffs are invested. They're changing the way they're coaching. But I don't think I've seen really any situation where you've had any of those older vets be like, I don't really care about this. It's a Tuesday night. I'm just going to do me. Everyone's been really, really bought in. And I'm not going to sit here and pat the NBA on the back because I don't think they knew that, Mo. I don't think they knew going into it that they were going to have this much buy-in across the league. I think they were hoping for it. I think best case scenario, they were going to be like, well, all of our younger guys are going to be bought in. And if we have one or two grumpy vets, it is what it is. But good for them. Good for them that they've had this much buy-in. Good for them that last night wasn't just a Monday night for LeBron. Last night, LeBron was playing like something was on the line because it was. Last night, KD was playing like something was on the line. He brought him back in the third quarter. And I'm not saying he wouldn't have cared as much if this wasn't the situation, but I think maybe he cared a little bit more. And I think that's what the NBA, Mo, was originally looking for was, can we take what might be a not that great matchup or a meaningless matchup or just a Monday night game in the middle of a long season, and can we make them play a little harder? Can we make it matter a little more? And I think they found out the way to do it.
To me, they tapped into the players' competitive nature. Because you could have easily gotten the kind of effort that you get at the All-Star game where it's a layup line, right? And there's no defense hardly, and guys literally get out the way so other guys can do tomahawk dunks. But there's only one first, and I think that's what motivating not just the young guys, but the veteran. This is the first time this is happening. You will be the first champion. That can never be erased. And when you look at some of the older veterans, when you look at Steph and LeBron and KD, I think they want that. They want that to be the first. They want to put that on their resume and go, 20 years from now, we'll go, the first one that did that, right? I mean, that does matter. And I think the NBA was hedging their bets that would kick in their competitive nature, and it has.
And Mo, I mean, I think it goes the same for fans because you can take a fan base and be like, just the in-season tournament, it doesn't matter unless your team wins it. If your team wins it, now it's a big deal. And I think you can look at players, and even if they have that mindset, they would rather win it. So they're going to give their all to go win the trophy. And then if they don't, they'll be, oh, it's just the in-season tournament. It is what it is.
Right.
But they want to win it. So
I think it does matter. Like you said, look, unless you're a really bad team, if you're Detroit, you're like, well, it's just the in-season tournament. What's it to us? We lost all last month.
Right. We win nothing anyway. So
right. Like so it doesn't change our life. Right. If you're that team, I get it. But it does matter. Even when you say like, well, it's just an in-season tournament, like you said, they want to win it. Even the team that wins it go, well, we won it. And the fan base will enjoy it and embrace it. If you're the team that almost wins it, like let's say the Pelicans lose, their fan base is going to be down, but they wanted to win it. I'm sure the default is, well, it's just the in-season tournament, but you wanted to win it. That's why you're there.
Before we head to our first break, Mo, let's talk a little college football. So FSU, and we talked about this yesterday, and people are going to feel how they want to feel about it. Some think FSU is robbed. Some think that it's just a natural product of what the college football system lining up is to be especially after what happened with TCU last year. If you are FSU, though, Mo, you need, in my opinion, and I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on this, you need to pump the brakes a little bit with the victim card, because I would almost argue that you're going to run up, you're not going to, you are about to run up against a far larger victim than you are, because no one's talking about Georgia football right now. Georgia football was the number one team in the country. Georgia football had won 29 straight football games. Georgia football in 29 of those wins, or 26 of those 29 wins, absolutely obliterated the opponent they were playing on the other side of the field. Georgia football lost one game in 30 games, and it was to a team that many believe are one of the top 5 teams in the nation. And they didn't get blown out. They didn't get embarrassed. And that one loss dropped them from 1st to 6th, completely out of an opportunity to play for a 3rd straight national championship. You don't hear anything from Georgia. You don't see Georgia walking around being like, how do we go from 1 to 6? We're perfect for literally almost 3 years, and we lose one game, and that one game we go from 1 to 6, and we can't have an opportunity to compete for our 3 back-to-back championships? No, Georgia looks at it and they say, we should have beat Alabama. We didn't do our job. We'll move on. Well, FSU, you're playing Georgia. That's who your next opponent is. If you get rolled by Georgia by 30 or 40 points, yeah, what more? And which might happen, Mo. That might happen.
Oh, I can see it happening.
So,
no offense.
I mean, I get it. You can be upset. You can talk about your resume, talk about how you are undefeated. You have an argument. I'm not saying you don't have an argument. What I'm saying is there's going to be an opportunity coming up very quickly for you where if you get blown out of the room, how does that make you look if you're FSU, Mo? Because your whole argument is you should have been there. You should have been 4 because you earned it. I get it. I get your argument. And because of that, you would have been they're saying they would have been competitive. They're saying they have any given Saturday, we can beat Michigan, which means you better be competitive against Georgia, who is the 6th team in the country, who you are ranked higher against over right now. If they blow you up by 30, right? If they blow you up by 30, doesn't that just prove what the college football committee was saying, which is you're not the same team, you didn't belong there.
And they're not playing, and you're not playing with your best quarterback, right? You're not playing with your starting quarterback. So you're not the same team that you were in the first half of the season. Not really. They have every right to be upset. I think we've all agreed on that. But they need to know they're not the first team that's undefeated that didn't make the Final Four. They're not. This isn't new territory. And I'm with you if you want to go, well, we're not TCU. And so there's no way you could know that we would get rolled like they got rolled in the championship game. You're 100% right. There's no way to know, and that's the beauty of sports. It's unpredictable. You guys would have walked in there, and maybe you play Bama, and maybe you play Bama to a standstill, and it goes into overtime, and it's just a great story. But the likelihood of you doing that without your number 1 quarterback, it doesn't seem that likely. I still think the 4 best teams are in to a degree, but at the same time, like you said, Georgia's got 1 loss, the same 1 loss that Alabama has. They just had theirs against Alabama late in the season, right? And Georgia's that's the crazy part. And just like that, the 2-time national champion, they're on the verge of a 3-peat. They lost 1 game, and they're not in the picture. And like you said, all Georgia did is roll up their sleeves and go, we should have beat Bama. We should have beat Bama. We've been good. And I have nothing but respect for I'm sure they're upset, but I have nothing but respect for the University of Georgia. Nothing against Florida State. It just didn't happen for you. And to your point, Chris, they better make it a great game or win the game when they play Georgia. They better be right there or win the game, because if they get blown out, the backlash is coming. Right? Oh, you're going to hear all that's why we told you. That's why we didn't put you there, right? Because this is what could happen. I have nothing. Look, Florida State had a great season. They did. And I don't like the way the committee did things, but that doesn't mean they didn't get the right 4 teams in there, right? It feels wrong because Florida State is undefeated, and yet do you think Florida State is one of the 4 best teams in college football? I don't.
And like I said, Mo, we talked about this yesterday. Come next season, it's a moot point. There's going to be 12 teams. All
beautiful.
FSU is going to make it next year. Like, you're going to have that opportunity. College football right now, I mean, they're making money hand over fist this season. This is one of the highest rated college football seasons of all time. But Mo, let me ask you this, because this was also brought up with FSU the other day. What if their coach was Coach Prime?
Would it be different?
Would it be different?
Yes.
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 Yes. I know that's terrible to say that, but yes, he is. They could come in there with their second or third string quarterback, but if that's Coach Prime running that team, because how big he is, how box office he is, absolutely they're going to be in the Final Four.
And that right there shows you college football is a business. They are looking to make the most money they can make while also putting together a competitive product on the field. And that answer right there, if anyone can look at this, no matter how you feel about FSU, and you can acknowledge that if that was Coach Prime's team, they would have been in there, it's because that draws money. Coach Prime draws money. And if his team is competing for a national championship, that's going to help the ratings, which is going to help the bottom line. So as long as you can wrap your head around the fact of what this is, which is a moneymaker, then we're all on the same page. Because at that point, you should be able to acknowledge FSU isn't making money in the Final Four this season. They're not. I'm just saying, like, it's nothing against the program. Alabama's a better matchup. Alabama's going to draw more viewers. Alabama's going to bring more eyes to the screen in that Alabama-Michigan matchup than an FSU-Michigan matchup was going to bring. Sorry. Like, I'm not trying to be mean to FSU, but that just is what it is. And lucky for you guys and all the other FSUs of the world out there, there's going to be 12 spots next year. But Mo, just because there's 12 spots, what are we going to be talking about? That 13th and 14th team.
You know we are. You know we are. You know we are.
Shift to that's the team that was 13th that feels they should have been in over the 11th place team.
Right. That's coming, and to that point, at some point, where's the cutoff? Because everybody can't be in the playoffs. Everybody can't be in the playoffs. So where is the cutoff? There will always be one more team that goes, we're one of the 14 best teams. We should have been there. So yes, there will always be a controversy. And look, I want to add one more thing, is that while it's a disappointment for SFU, for sure, for SFU, man, I know Michigan is like, man, we was ready to roll SFU. Just saying. I'm just being real. Michigan was like, man, we're about to, and now they're like, oh, this is different. So now you know what I mean? Like, this is different, and it is different. This will be a competitive football game that they could very well lose.
Listen, you know that Harbaugh has no credibility with the NCAA, so he wasn't saying anything. But you know he was calling his friends, being like, "Can you make a phone call and just say how much FSU deserves this?"
Right.
Like, can you just say how much they need to be in there? Because that's what he wanted to see. He didn't want to see Alabama this week.
The way his mind worked, I guarantee you, Jim Harbaugh was like, FSU was robbed.
Right. This is a travesty by the NCAA.
Right. He wanted to say it, but in his current situation, he can't say that.
Gene brought up a great point in the chat, and this is something that I talked about on social media a couple days ago, and he talked about best or deserving. And I said a couple days ago that you can't have both. You can't have the 4 best teams while also having the 4 most deserving teams in this situation. Maybe in other years you could, because I will tell you, FSU deserved to be there. They earned it. They earned the right. They did everything that they needed to do to be one of the 4 playoff teams this season. They deserved it. It doesn't make them one of the 4 best teams. And clearly in this situation, the NCAA didn't care about who deserved it. They cared about the 4 best teams. And I don't even know if Alabama was the best choice. I think Georgia would have been a better 4th team. Personally, I think that Georgia is better than I know Alabama beat them, but I think that Georgia would be better in this Final Four. But college football decided that Bama fit that mold the best because they beat Georgia. And I understand the backlash that they would have received if they put Georgia in over Bama, having just lost to Bama. So I get it. but they wanted the 4 best in their opinion, what the 4 best were. So that's what they did, and that's what we have. And we'll see how it shakes out. I think next year when they go to 12, they're going to be more open to adding a team or 2 like FSU this year. But again, I don't think that going to 12 is going to completely change their mindset, Mo. I think they're going to be looking for the 12 best teams. And that's why I just said we're going to have conversations next year of 2 or 3 teams that didn't make it that felt they should have been the 12th team going in. So the world keeps spinning.
Chris, you bring up a great point. Remember, everybody out there that's listening, as exciting and entertaining as college football is, it is a business. It is a juggernaut. And next year, if let's say Coach Prime's Buffaloes is one of the top 10 or 11 teams, for whatever reason, you think they're not going to be a moneymaker? Of course they are. Even if it's close between them and another team, the selection committee is going to go, you know where the money is. Mm-hmm. You know where the money is because it's a business.
All right, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we are going to have the NFL genius with us. Gene from Wire to Wire is going to be joining us, and we have a lot to talk about in the world of the NFL. We're going to do that right after the break. Don't go anywhere. It's Coffee and Sports. It's the morning show here on Sports Empire Network.
What's up, everybody? It's Cottrell Simpson with Wire to Wire Sports Podcast, where we're going to cover all things breaking news, sports related. We're going to preview games, and we're also going to give you our reaction to the games that have happened before. You can catch us on Wednesdays from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. And if you miss us there, no worries. You can also catch us on Roku with Northeast Streaming Sports Productions from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m.
Hey, and listen, if you're not into all sports and just NFL, we have Sideline to Sideline. That's on Thursday nights from 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time to 8 p.m. We'll break down the NFL week, the Thursday night game, and we'll preview all NFL action.
And if you're like me and college football is your fix, tune in every Saturday morning at 10 a.m. for Coast to Coast College Football pregame show. We'll review the previous week's action, the day's biggest games. We'll give you our pick'ems, and we'll even give you some teams that are on upset alert.
And if you don't catch us live, you can download us on Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, or wherever you listen to your podcast. We do also have a YouTube station, Wire to Wire Sports Podcast. Thanks for tuning in.
Welcome back. It is Coffee and Sports. It is the morning show here on Sports Empire Network. We are joined now by the NFL genius himself. It is Gene from Wire to Wire. Gene, how are you this morning, sir?
I'm phenomenal. I know you wouldn't expect that, but I'm phenomenal.
Why wouldn't I expect that, Gene? Come on now.
Listen, after Sunday, it took me a day. Super Bowl took me a week. Sunday took me a day. I got 24 hours, and then I felt good again.
Well, Gene, Mel and I talked about this on Monday, and it's a blow, obviously. But we also talked about the fact that if the Eagles beat the Cowboys this weekend, you're right back to where you were. Like the narrative goes back right on track to what it needs to be. And it's like the Niners lost didn't happen unless you face them in the playoffs, and people will bring it up. But that's all the Eagles need. They win this weekend. They're back on track. We're good to go. They lose, it's a different conversation that we're not going to have today because I don't want to have that conversation with you right now because you're feeling good. So we're going to keep it there. Gene, let's talk about this. Speaking of the Cowboys, Micah Parsons, I don't know who gave this man a talk show. I don't understand it. And I get it. He's a Dallas Cowboy. Look at what Jerry Jones does when he goes and talks. He's always going to be pro-Cowboy. I get that. There's a difference, though, between being pro-Cowboy and pro-Dak and just spewing complete nonsense out of your mouth that I don't think has any place to be spoken about. And that's what he did yesterday when he basically said that he could be the starting quarterback for the Niners or the Dolphins because he can throw the ball and have Tyreek go chase it down, and he can throw screen passes to Deebo Samuel and have Deebo take the ball to the house. And for him, and I get what he was doing. What he was trying to do was elevate Dak, while also say that Purdy and Tua shouldn't be in the MVP conversation with his quarterback. If that's the case, then say that. Because in my opinion, for you as an athlete, I feel it's different if it's one of us saying it. I feel like it's different if it's someone who didn't play football saying it and their job is just to talk sports. But when you're actually currently in that brotherhood, you actually play with these guys. And you're basically saying, as a defensive player, I could do what you do. All you do is chuck the ball and Tyreek goes catch it. All you do is throw it a half a yard and Debo takes it to the house. Gene, it's a little disrespectful if you ask me.
It's completely disrespectful. He's delusional. The first thing I want to bring up is this, right? Two of the quarterbacks I've been most wrong about in the NFL have been Tua and Brock Purdy. Over the course of a year and a half, 2 years watching football, I watched Purdy at Iowa State. I mean, he was terrible. He was awful. There's a reason he was Mr. Irrelevant. So I couldn't get past what I watched when Iowa State played Iowa and how bad he looked, that I kept making excuses. It's Kyle Shanahan. It's this, it's that. It's not. He's playing great football. He's literally worked and gotten better and better. And I seen it week one. I made my admittance speech after week one when San Francisco carved up Pittsburgh and the decisions that Brock Purdy made in that game. I'll make another statement. Tua, for a year and a half, I'm like, he's not that good. But like, if you watch him play football now, he might be the most intelligent quarterback in football. Like, with the motions and the speed that the Miami Dolphins play with, the timing that they have to be on, he's calling checks as the receivers in motion, hitting guys in stride. Tyreek Hill said Tua threw him the ball to the route he was supposed to be running and threw him open. It's just, you have to admit when you're wrong about things, right? I've been right about a lot of stuff, NFL. If you think you can do what those two quarterbacks are doing, you're delusional. And I think the third part of that Micah Parsons debate that you're talking about, like, I could do what Brock Purdy's doing, I could do what Tua's doing, is the fact that he gets really upset that skill position players can't win MVP. He said that numerous times on his podcast, saying it's not that tough for them to do what they're doing. Yes, he's probably propping up Dak, but in the same respect, he's also saying, like, it's, you guys make it like such a difficult job. What I do is so difficult. So I think with Micah, it's a lot of delusion. And I'm glad he's an incredible talent.
Mm-hmm.
But he gets a lot of hype I think he's the fourth best defensive player in the NFL this year, and he's favored to win Defensive Player of the Year. I don't understand that. It's boggling.
Mo, Dallas Cowboy fans are riding the Dak for MVP train hard right now. He's had a great season, Mo. I'm not taking anything away from Dak Prescott. I'm not going to crap on him right now. Today, if you had to give it to a quarterback today, and the season was ending today, is Dak that quarterback right now?
Man, that's tough. Look, he has great numbers, and I don't want to be a homer and bring up Purdy. I don't want to be a homer. I think Brock has had as good a season as Dak has had, and he's not just dinking and dunking. I know they say that he just throws screens and bubble screens to Debo. That's part of their offense, no question. But he's pushing the ball down the field in intermediate routes, deep cut routes, deep fades. Like, he's pushing the ball down the field. Having said that, is Dak the front runner to me? That's a tough one. I know, and it's not, I'm not trying to be anti-Cowboy. I'm not. But when you look at the quarterbacks right now, who I guess would be considered MVP candidates, I would just say he's probably the front runner right now. Maybe to me, for him to win MVP, he would have to beat the Eagles. To me, for him to literally sew up MVP, he would have to beat the Eagles, and I think that's easier said than done. But if he beats the Eagles and they go ahead and win out that way, how would he not be MVP?
Gene, if the season ended last weekend or Monday night, you gotta give it to a quarterback. Is Dak the quarterback who gets it?
No, it's Brock Purdy. It's Brock Purdy, and it's not close. He has, so 4 times in NFL history, has a quarterback led the league in air yards and completion percentage. Brock Purdy is one of those 4 quarterbacks. The other 3 have won MVP. He's leading the league in air yards and in completion percentage. That's almost impossible to do because the ones that lead the league in completion percentage are the ones that throw the ball shorter.
Right.
And the ones that lead the bar in air yards are not they don't lead the league in completion percentage. Peyton Manning did it the first year he was in Denver. It's absurd to think it could be anyone else. Like, I hate that it's Brock Purdy because I've been so wrong about him in the past, but it's Brock Purdy. Like, watch him play football. You're not watching because he's making the right decision on every play. Even in that first quarter versus the Philadelphia Eagles, he was thrown off his spot. He was 0 for 4, and then he adjusted. And 6 straight touchdown drives. 6 straight. Yeah, you can point to the screen pass to Deebo Samuel. Do you guys know he's only 48.5 yards after catch per game? That's what he's averaging per game. In the NFL, the MVP last year, 48.6, Patrick Mahomes. It's the same thing. Guys, stop. I feel like we're just hating on the guy because he was the last pick in the draft. You're doing what I did. You're locking into a take and you're not admitting you're wrong. You got to be able to do it. You're never always right. Never always right. You can't do that. It's Brock Purdy.
Gene, is there anything Tyreek Hill can do to win MVP this season? Assuming he breaks the record, assuming he's, 16, 17, 18 touchdowns, is where he's projected to finish. He's going to be top 4 or 5 in receptions. He's second right now. So if that's where it ends, top 3 in receptions, over to say 2,200 yards, 17 touchdowns, is that enough to take it from a quarterback, or is it still not going to matter?
He needs quarterbacks to fall apart. He can win it, like 2,000 yards, top 3 in receptions. Like he can definitely win it, but he would need quarterbacks to fall apart down the stretch. A lot of people forget how volatile the MVP voting is the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. Jalen Hurts was just a plus 150 favorite, and now he's third. It's volatile. So if Brock Purdy goes out and has a couple bad games, Dak Prescott goes out and has a couple bad games, Jalen Hurts goes out and has a couple bad games, they're going to try to find a way to give it to Lamar,
Right,
so you need a couple quarterbacks to fall apart, and you need Tyreek to have a record-breaking season. Offensive Player of the Year is turned into MVP to me because it's the best skill position player in the NFL. They should rename the award from MVP to Most Valuable Quarterback because that's what they've done over the past 15 years.
Colin Cowherd had a take yesterday, and I'm usually on board with a lot of Colin's takes, but this one I couldn't disagree with more adamantly. And Mo, we're going to start with you. He tried to compare the current Kansas City Chiefs to year 1 Tom Brady's Buccaneers. And his comparison here was that the Chiefs are coming down offensively, and their defense for the first time in Mahomes' career is probably better than the offense. I'm on board so far. And because of that, that's lining the Chiefs up to go on this incredible run where he essentially said they're going to win out. They're going to be the number 1 seed in the AFC, and then they're going to roll to the Super Bowl. And I listened to this entire take, and I thought at some point he was going to acknowledge what Tom Brady had on offense in Tampa Bay. Because what he had on offense, and I know it was an aging Gronk, but he still had his best friend in Gronk, who, by the way, made a lot of crucial plays late in the season for Tampa Bay. Oh, by the way, he had Mike Evans. Oh, by the way, he had Chris Godwin. Oh, and who was his third receiver? Oh, Antonio Brown. And I know it was an older version of Antonio Brown, but I would take the older version of Antonio Brown over most threes in the NFL that season because that's what he was viewed as, was a 3. Oh, and he also had, I think I forget the kid's name, Scotty something. He was their 4th receiver, which I think is a quality 3 in the slot, especially when you're Tom Brady, who loves little white guys who run slot routes. Let's be honest. That's what he likes, right? So, but he didn't acknowledge any of that. He was just comparing defense being better than the offense, and that's what the Patrick Mahomes has right now. Mo, I think he couldn't be more wrong. I don't think the Chiefs – I'm not saying the Chiefs aren't a contender for the Super Bowl. I'm not saying that.
They are.
I don't think they're going to finish first in the AFC. I think whoever wins the regular season game between the Dolphins and the Ravens, that's going to be your number 1 team in the AFC. I think the Chiefs are still going to win their division because no one's catching them. I don't think Denver is going to catch them. So they're going to be at worst a 4 seed. And yeah, they're going to be a tough out in the playoffs because like you and I said, Mo, the AFC is pretty wide open. There isn't really a dominant, complete team in the AFC. I don't think the Chiefs are rolling. If you're wrong, if I'm wrong, tell me. But I don't think they're rolling.
They're not rolling. And interesting enough, I would have said old Antonio Brown is better than any receiver they have on their current roster. So So I can agree with Colin Cowherd about the defense being a little bit better than the offense this year, but if they had old Antonio Brown, they'd have a better record.
Gene, they would give anything. They might want current Antonio Brown on their team right now because I think look at what the Chiefs are dealing with. Who are they throwing the ball to in clutch situations at the end of the game? No, Scatlin? He can't catch.
They've it's really funny the way the Chiefs break. First of all, that's a terrible take by Colin. And I like Colin also. Like I'm normally on board with a lot of his takes. That's an awful take by Colin. You can't, so you're talking about an offense that underperformed for the majority of the season in that Tampa Bay Bucs team. This offense isn't underperforming. They're not good. You have Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, and teams are learning how to guard Travis Kelce by bracket coverage between a safety and a linebacker, and they're making Mahomes beat you by throwing the ball to number 4s and number 5s on the receiver front. Rashee Rice is the only wide receiver on that team that's worth a damn. Kadarius Toney is a joke. Marquez Valdez-Scantling leads the league in dropped passes. Like it's not close. What are we talking about? Tom Brady was throwing the ball to Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Gronk, Antonio Brown. Not to mention he had Leonard Fournette coming out of the backfield. Like what are we talking about? That's absurd. That to compare it's the worst comparison I think I've ever heard. It's terrible.
Gene, we've talked a few times here about how open the AFC is. In your opinion, what is the most complete team currently in the AFC? Obviously, injuries can kind of change that. But as you're looking at the top 4 teams, and assuming that Lawrence is back towards the end of the season and they still hang on and win their division, which is questionable, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But in your opinion, who is the front runner to take the 1 seed, or not even take the 1 seed, just make the playoffs and then make a push to the AFC Championship to play either the Eagles or the Niners, who we think is what's going to end up happening in the NFC side of it?
I mean, it's Baltimore and Miami. You can't argue either one. I guess if you're pressing me and I have to give you one, I'd probably say Baltimore because they have 2 guys that have made an earth-shattering difference on that defense, and that's Roquan Smith and Kyle Hamilton. Those 2 guys are next-level, all-pro, underrated. I don't know how they can be underrated on one of the best teams in football, but you don't hear people talk about Kyle Hamilton. He might be the best safety in football. He's unbelievable. And Roquan Smith, what he's done to that defense since he's been traded there is just underappreciated. And I think that you have to say Baltimore, but Miami is right there. I love Miami's overall team, top to bottom. Anytime you have an offense with that much speed, Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Raheem Mostert, Devin Achane, it's tough not to say them. And Vic Fangio has done a great job of kind of developing that defense. You can kind of see them getting better and better. Jalen Ramsey's back. It's those 2 teams. I think that the AFC's quarterback gauntlet has really fallen apart, right? So Joe Burrow's out for the year. Trevor Lawrence is hurt. Josh Allen's not in the playoff picture right now. Justin Herbert's not in the playoff picture right now. Aaron Rodgers has been hurt all season. You're down to 3 quarterbacks. It's Mahomes, Lamar, and Tua. And when you're looking at playoff pedigree, I think that Baltimore and Miami need that home game really bad because I feel like whoever gets that home game in the playoffs is going to be able to knock off the Chiefs and be able to get to the Super Bowl. It's cliche, but I think the number 1 seed in the AFC will go to the Super Bowl.
If we look at the Jaguars' upcoming schedule, now technically he hasn't been ruled out yet for this Sunday. They're saying that he can put pressure on it. They're optimistic he can play. I don't think he's going to play this Sunday, but even if he does, he's not going to be 100% for a couple of weeks. If you look at their next 2 games, those are probably the toughest 2 games on their schedule. They got the Browns coming up, and they got the Ravens. Then they finished with the Bucs, the Panthers, and the Titans. The concern, though, if you're a Jaguars fan, is you don't have room to breathe. You're a game up on the Colts and the Texans. You don't play them, which means that you got to take care of the business on your schedule because they're not playing the hardest of schedules either. Let's be honest. I mean, you finish top of your division. They're right behind you. They're playing a little easier schedule than you are down the stretch. So you don't have room for error, Gene. I don't know if they're going to be able to get past. They might be able to get past Cleveland. Cleveland's defense is good, but they have no offense. But again, we don't know if Lawrence is playing. We don't know what it's going to look like. If they lose their next 2 games, which is very possible, because I don't think they're going to beat the Ravens regardless. If they lose their next 2 games, isn't it potential to say they might miss the playoffs if the other teams behind them keep playing to the level they're playing? Because there's a whole slew of 7-5 and 6-6 teams in the AFC right now that are looking to stomp on those wild card spots. So I would almost have to assume if they lose their next 2, they got to win out. Because if they lose 3 of the next 5, I don't think they're making it.
Well, I agree with you, but I don't think the Texans or the Colts are going to win out either. Like, yeah, they don't have the easiest. They don't have the toughest road, but they definitely don't have the easiest. They still have games that they have to play. If I'm not mistaken, I think the Colts still have to play the Texans, so one of them has to lose in that game. But when I look at that Jacksonville Jaguars team, it reminds me of a lot. Here's one thing I'll point out. What was Doug Peterson in his career? He was a career backup quarterback. How did he win his Super Bowl? He won it with a backup quarterback. If anybody's going to have CJ Beathard ready to play and beat Cleveland, it's Doug Peterson. I think he's the king of the backup quarterback. He's done it for years. He did it in Philadelphia. He's done it throughout his entire NFL career. I think they go out and beat Cleveland this week, and I think it's irrelevant. I think the Jaguars go 4-1 in the next 5 games. I think they lose to Baltimore. I don't think Trevor Lawrence plays this week or next week, but that Cleveland Browns offense is awful. And I don't care if it's Joe Flacco, PJ Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robb. They're terrible. And for us to expect the Cleveland Browns to be a good offense after losing their starting quarterback and the best player on their team in Nick Chubb, we expect them to be good. They're not. They're not going to be good. And I think that the Jacksonville Jaguars find a way to win this football game. I was shocked they still lost the game Monday night, even with Trevor Lawrence going out. By the way, Trevor Lawrence looked great in that football game. We don't mention how good he looked, putting 28 points up, because that Jaguars defense was making why am I forgetting this? Jake Browning looked like he was Joe Montana back there. So
the Texans play the Jets, the Titans, the Browns, and the Titans again before
they don't play the Colts.
Before they end with the Colts.
Oh, they end with the Colts.
Then the Colts play the Steelers, the Falcons, the Bengals, and the Raiders before ending with the Texans. I mean, that last game is probably going to be a playoff game for both of those teams.
Agreed. I think it's for the wild card, though. I think Jacksonville still wins the division. But I agree with you. I think that last game is a playoff game. And I think it's understated this year of what Shane Steichen and Gardner Minshew have done with that Colts team. Give Shane Steichen all the credit in the world, because you got to think of it this way, right? Shane Steichen was the offensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles last year, and the development that Jalen Hurts took from year 1 to year 2 in Steichen's system. Look at what he's doing with the Colts, scheming people open. Mm-hmm. That's what they're missing in Philadelphia right now. Brian Johnson's not doing a great job of that.
Mo, how is it possible that if you're the Jacksonville Jaguars, the single most important person in your franchise, you can't get that man a damn golf cart? He has to hobble off the field with a security guard.
All right, so I was losing my mind as that was happening, and I was like, am I the only one that's tripping that this is happening in real time? Your franchise player, it looked like something from a military, like a war movie. You know what I mean? I don't understand that, and I was losing it, and I don't understand how the head coach didn't sprint out there and try to. I've never seen that, and I don't understand that at all, how that could happen.
Like I was almost, and I wish it happened because it would have been such a cool moment. I was almost waiting for the offensive line to run out and just carry him.
Yeah.
Because that would have been a lot better than watching him have to hobble to the back on the shoulder of one guy because you couldn't find a cart to carry this man.
A little help. Come on.
That's why they're a poverty franchise. They've always been a poverty franchise. And they're starting to dig themselves out of being a poverty franchise. But that's a really bad look. I was doing the same thing, Mo.
I thought it was just me. I'm like, come on.
It was terrible.
Gentlemen, last thing I want to talk about while we got Gene here. And Gene, you talked about it a little earlier. You mentioned Mike Evans. Mike Evans, 10 straight years, 1,000 yards receiving. Great accomplishment. But when you have an accomplishment like that, Gene, it opens the door to talk about, well, how great is he? So if you look at the receivers of the past decade, he came into the league the 2014 season. Gene, where do you rank Mike Evans amongst receivers over the past decade? Do you think he is one of the greatest receivers in the league over that, not all time, but just over that time span? Or do you look at it and say, well, okay, Chris, 1 year he had 1,001 yards. 1 year he had 1,006 yards. Like, yeah, he's hitting 1,000 yards, but it's not like he's hitting 12, 13, 1,400 a season. Some seasons he barely got there. How do you look at the accomplishment?
I've never seen a receiver in the NFL so overrated and underrated at the same time. It makes no logical sense. Like, every time he accomplishes this 1,000 yards, they overrate the hell out of him. And then the rest of the year, they underrate him. I've seen people's wide receivers list, and he wasn't a top 10 wide receiver on it. I don't think he's a top 7 receiver in the NFL right now. I don't think over the past 10 years he's ever been the number 1 receiver in football. But consistency matters. Who does that remind you of? Who was never a number 1 receiver in their entire career, but is listed as a top 5 receiver of all time? Larry Fitzgerald. He was never the number 1 receiver in the NFL ever. However, consistency matters. And he'll be a Hall of Fame wide receiver because of this consistency. When you look back at his career and say, wow, he said like 12 1,000-yard seasons in a row, you can't discredit that. And that consistency and being able to be on the field, being healthy for that many games, that many years in a row, it's consistency. But he's not better than Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Devontae Adams. Like, I'm probably missing 1 or 2. Jamar Chase is better than him. He's not better than the elite receivers in football, just like Larry Fitzgerald wasn't better than Julio Jones, Antonio Brown. Like, he wasn't, right? Randy Moss, Terrell Owens, like, depending on what part of the career you're looking at. But it's kind of disrespectful the way he gets underrated, like how he's not on a lot of people's top 10 lists.
If you just pull up the stats since the 2014 season, he does have the most yards receiving over that time span. He's just ahead of DeAndre Hopkins, who is about 200 yards behind him, and Travis Kelce, who's about 250 behind him. Other names, Julio Jones, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs, Keenan Allen, Tyreek Hill are also up there in the top 10, just for yardage over the past 10 years.
Out of all those receivers that you just said, the only one you can clearly say he's better than is Keenan Allen, right?
That's
like,
fair.
out of everyone you just said, DeAndre Hopkins' peak has been better than his. Tyreek Hill's peak's been better than his. Travis Kelce's peak's been better than his. Like, and granted, if you look at the 10 years that he's had, some receivers came in, like Jettas came in 2018.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, you can't, it's very needle pick. Like, you're picking his 10 years, right?
Correct.
Julio
Yep.
Jones's prime ended 4 years ago. So comparing them to is not fair. If we want to compare their best 10 seasons to each other, he'll be middle of the road. He won't be top 3.
No, I agree. Gene, always a pleasure having you here on Wednesdays. We appreciate it. What's happening over
Appreciate
at Wire
you,
to Wire? When can we see you next?
Tonight we're going to go off. It's going to be a really long segment about the college football playoff. I was losing my mind when you guys were talking about that earlier. By the way, I love listening to you guys in the morning. I really appreciate what you guys bring to the table. You're my daily commute to work. Wednesday's my day off. I'm thankful to be able to get on and talk sports with you guys. But as I said in the comments, right, we are going to discuss who the best 4 teams were and who the most deserving 4 teams were. And neither one of those things happened with this college football playoff committee.
What time is that tonight, Gene?
7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be on, and we will be fired up. I know Shally is fired up. Being a Michigan fan, he doesn't want to admit it, but he doesn't want to see Alabama. He wanted Florida State so Michigan can have their walkthrough.
I've never been on with Shally, but every time I watch you guys, he's the most intense looking guy I've ever seen.
He's fun. We're trying to get him to do a segment like Uncle Shally's rants, because his rants become epic. When he gets fired up and red in the face, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, make sure you tune in to Gene tonight. Gene, we'll see you next week, sir.
Appreciate
Take care,
you.
brother. Thank you.
So, well, let's close out the show with this. So, Chad Ochocinco, who I don't know what he does currently with his life because he's all over. I mean, he was just on Manning Talk the other night with the Manning brothers during Monday Night Football. He does something for like Madden with EA Sports, so he's always like showing up at games to like rank play. Like the man is all over.
He's a Renaissance man,
right? But you don't really know what he does all over the world of football besides just kind of hang out with people and talk to people. But I'm all about it. I'm all about me some Ocho. He's in a commercial right now for something. I'm all about Ochocinco. He was talking earlier this week about the Pro Bowl. And of course, this has to do with him. Otherwise, he wouldn't be talking about it. But his idea for the Pro Bowl is, you know what? If we're going to do flag football and we're just going to make it, basically touch football and no one's out there getting hurt or anything crazy like that, he goes, why not take the best currently of the former Pro Bowlers who still got some tread on the tires and put them against the current players and let's see what happens. And it was some laughs, it was some jokes when he was saying it, and then it kind of went away until the GOAT got involved. Tom Brady talked about it on social media, and Tom Brady said, you give me Ochocinco and Randy Moss, and we'll put 35 on you tomorrow. So now I look at him and I'm like, if Brady wants it, if Brady wants this to happen, there's a chance it could happen. Ochocinco might not move the needle, but Tom Brady damn sure moves the needle. And the NFL will do whatever they can do to get Tom Brady back doing something quarterback related for them.
Absolutely.
So if Tom Brady wants to go play flag football at the quarterback position for the NFL, just like college football, the NFL is a business. You bet your bottom dollar they're going to let him do that because no one watches the damn Pro Bowl anyways. But they're going to watch if Brady's there playing football.
I'll watch. And I'm on board. I'm all for it because I think that Tom Brady, Ochocinco, and Randy Moss would hang 35 on anybody they go up against.
Well, let me give you another name to add to that. They didn't mention it, but I know he's still in shape. T.O.
I think T.O.'s better in shape than some of the current players.
He is.
That guy is a workout. He's a workout freak of nature. I saw him run a 40 not too long ago. He's still running 4 or 5 40s. So yes, throw T.O. in there. Give the GOAT those 3 guys, and he will eat you alive. But I'm here for it.
Let me ask you this, Mo, because I think, again, we talked about the NBA and we talked about the in-season tournament, and we've seen kind of a ripple effect with it. What if this proposed idea has a similar ripple effect? Because if you're going to put Brady, maybe not Brady, but more specifically Moss and T.O. and Ochocinco on the offensive side, aren't you going to have some defensive players who normally might be like, I don't want to go to the Pro Bowl, be like, I'll go line up across from T.O. I want to guard T.O. in flag football. I want a piece of – I love T.O. Like, aren't you going to have guys that might be like, well, I'll go for that. I'll go to hang out with them. I watched these guys growing up. Like, I play receiver because I'm a T.O. guy. Like, don't you think more will want to be a part of it? Chris,
you read my mind. I can see Sauce Gardner going, yeah, I want to cover Randy Moss. I'm here for. I came up on these guys, but the opportunity to get up on these guys and have bragging rights and go, I shut you down. I shut you down. I absolutely am here for it. You give me the top corners today and give them the opportunity to go up against those legends. You don't think they'll take that serious? They're going to have some fun. There are going to be some laughs, but they're going to want to shut them down. Guarantee it.
And just like you're going to have quarterbacks today that I'll beat Tom Brady in flag football. At least I got that. At least I can say I beat him in something.
You see somebody bragging right now, like, I can see Eli getting in shape going, I beat Brady again. I did it again. Like, yeah, look, I think if you want people to watch the Pro Bowl, like you said, this idea and the ripple effect behind it is a smart way to go.
All right, Mo, close us out, sir.
Hey, appreciate everybody in the chat. Appreciate everybody that checked us out this morning, everybody that will check us out later. Thanks to Gene for coming on. Always listening to the NFL Genius is a pleasure. Check out all the great content that we have at Sports Empire Network. Check out the Empire.
we'll be back here, same time, same place tomorrow morning, where we break down. There is a football game tomorrow night. I don't know how many are going to watch it, but it's happening, and we're going to talk about it. So, make sure you tune in for that. We're going to have the in-depth analysis of that Patriots-Steelers game. And we got some other stuff happening as well tomorrow. So make sure you're here. JG's going to be on the show tomorrow. We got more baseball talk. Big trade yesterday for the Yankees. We're going to break that down tomorrow with JG. All of that's happening tomorrow morning. Make sure you're here for it. We will see you in the morning.
I mean, you can see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, you guys any